Chapter 1. Inside the ballroom of Crestview's most luxurious hotel, the lights were dazzling and glasses clinked. A circle of socialites, champagne flutes in hand, surrounded Juliet Monroe. "Miss Monroe, your gown tonight is simply stunning. It's a custom piece from a foreign designer. I heard it's the only one in the country. President Blackwood really went all out to make you happy. Isn't it the truth? And those shoes Miss Monroe is wearing, I pulled so many strings trying to buy them, but I couldn't find them anywhere. Turns out President Blackwood bought them for her. It's all a testament to Miss Monroe's own charm to have captured the heart of President Blackwood, a man who has always been so cold and aloof towards women." The compliments flowed freely, one after another, but Juliet could only manage a polite smile, unable to get a word in. She knew that these wealthy young women had always looked down on her because of her humble origins. The only reason they were fawning over her now was because of the man who stood at the pinnacle of power, Ethan Blackwood in Crestview. Ethan Blackwood was the king. And for years, she had been the only woman by his side. She had been with Ethan for 6 years, ever since college. Back then, she had been at her wits' end, unable to afford her tuition. It was Ethan who had helped her. In those 6 years, no other woman had ever been seen with him. His affection was reserved for her alone, and it was lavish. He paid her tuition, set off fireworks for her, and spent fortunes just to see her smile. If she wanted it, he would buy the entire city of Crestview and give it to her. Everyone said that the great tycoon of Crestview, after years of abstinence, had truly fallen in love. Even though Juliet told herself countless times that she and Ethan Blackwood were from 2 different worlds, the daily deluge of affection had made her lose herself in him. She hadn't had a happy childhood. Her parents favored her brother, so anything good in the house, be it food or toys, always went to him first. They had even secretly taken the tuition money she had saved from working part-time jobs and given it to her brother. Ethan Blackwood was the only ray of light in her dark life. How could she not fall for him? He was such a cold, noble man, yet he would tenderly feed her, hold her close during thunderstorms, and ride the Ferris wheel with her on anniversaries, doing every romantic thing imaginable. What truly made her let her guard down was in her 2nd year with him. That year, news of his arranged marriage with the daughter of a conglomerate hit the headlines, and everyone in Crestview knew. She had nestled in his arms, her heart pounding with anxiety, and tentatively asked him if his fiancée was pretty. Ethan, still glistening with a light sweat after their lovemaking, his strong chest rising and falling gently, stroked her long hair and smiled faintly. Jealous, after a moment's hesitation, she finally spoke. "Mr. Blackwood, my only principle is to never be the other woman." She always called him Mr. Blackwood, even in their most intimate moments. Ethan suddenly chuckled and leaned in to kiss her. "Is that so? In that case, I won't get married." True to his word, Ethan quickly called off the engagement. From that day on, there were no more rumors about him and any arranged marriage. Even though she later found out that the engagement had been nothing more than a publicity stunt for a business deal, and he had never intended to marry that woman, the damage was done. Her heart, once given, could not be taken back. The music started, and many people flocked to the dance floor. As the crowd dispersed, Juliet finally had a moment to breathe. She was about to go find Ethan, who was busy socializing, when she failed to notice a pair of jealous, almond-shaped eyes staring daggers at her from the crowd. As she walked quickly towards Ethan, the woman suddenly stuck out her leg. With a loud thud, Juliet was tripped. Her head slammed into the sharp corner of a table, and she blacked out completely. Chapter 2. While unconscious, Juliet felt as if she were in a dream. In the dream, she was just a character in a novel, a disposable supporting character at that. The only reason Ethan Blackwood chose to be with her was because she had a face that resembled his one true love, his idealized first love, Serafina Vance. He pampered her, protected her, and spoiled her, but he never loved her. Later, when his first love returned to the country, she was naturally cast aside. But it was at this exact moment that she became pregnant. Ethan offered her a check for $50 million to leave, but the child had to stay and be given to Serafina. He told her that Serafina couldn't have children, and from that day forward, the child in her womb would be Serafina's. Juliet was to disappear from their lives forever, but Juliet couldn't bear to part with her child. A few years later, she secretly risked returning to the country. By then, however, her child already saw Serafina as her mother and despised Juliet. For the sake of her child, she couldn't help but constantly antagonize Serafina, which ultimately led to Ethan stripping her of everything and forcing her to a gruesome death. The moment she fell from the rooftop in the dream, Juliet shot her eyes open in terror. She saw the familiar decor of the hotel room. The doctor standing by her bed had already finished dressing her wound and was packing up. She stared at the scene in horror, a cold sweat breaking out across her forehead. Was it just a dream, or was it a premonition of what was to come? By the massive floor-to-ceiling window, Ethan Blackwood was on the phone, his face a cold mask, his voice sharp with anger. "Don't say another word begging won't do you any good. The Davis family must be bankrupt by midnight tonight. How dare she touch my woman? I'll make her crawl out of Crestview." His tone was so frigid, exactly like in the dream when he coldly told her to give her child away. Juliet was so frightened she broke into a coughing fit. Noticing she was awake, Ethan immediately turned, hung up the phone, and rushed to her side, his voice softening. "You're awake? Are you uncomfortable anywhere?" He turned to the doctor. "How serious is her injury? Are you sure it won't leave a scar? Use the most expensive medicine, whatever it takes. I want her face to be exactly as it was before." The doctor, clearly terrified of Ethan, nodded frantically. He really did care about her. Just like every day before, he was domineering, powerful, and protective, making her fall for him step by step. If it weren't for that dream, seeing him so concerned for her right now would have only made her fall deeper. Ethan gently caressed her cheek. "Why aren't you talking? Were you scared? Does it still hurt?" As his cold fingertips touched her skin, she suddenly remembered the utterly indifferent look on his face just before she fell to her death in the dream. Then, she instinctively flinched away. Ethan froze for a moment, thinking she was still frightened. He gently massaged the back of her neck to soothe her. Since he had urgent matters to attend to, he arranged for someone to take her back to the villa and ensure she was well looked after. In the car, Juliet's mind was in a daze. Back at the villa, she was even more agitated, the scenes from her dream replaying in her mind over and over. She desperately needed answers, needed to know the truth. Driven by this urgency, she secretly entered the study, a room Ethan had always forbidden her from entering. After rummaging through every cabinet in the room, she finally found a locked drawer. Inside was a collection of photographs. Exactly 14 of them, all of the same girl. And the girl's face was identical to the one in her dream. Chapter 3, they seemed to be childhood sweethearts. The photos spanned from the time the girl was 7 until she was 20. On the back of every single photo, Ethan had written something in his own hand. Serafina at 7, crying for candy. Her pouting was so adorable. At that moment, I just wanted to tell her that her Ethan would buy her candy for a lifetime. Serafina at 12, performing her first dance at the arts festival. My treasure, my girl was shining. Serafina at 14, received a love letter from another boy. I beat him up and used my family's influence to have him transferred out of Crestview. From now on, her eyes can only be for me. Serafina at 18, wearing the crystal slippers I gave her. Serafina, I can't wait another 2 years. I want to marry you right now. Juliet's hands trembled. Looking at the 13-14 photos, reading Ethan's words, his love for Serafina, so raw and undisguised it practically spilled off the page, staring at the face that was 70 to 80% similar to her own. She felt as if she had been struck by lightning. So the person he truly loved was Serafina Vance. So she was nothing but Serafina's stand-in. A sharp pain pierced her heart, and as she thought about the events of her dream, a wave of terror washed over her. If that dream was real, if all of it was real, then her eventual fate. A few days later, it was the time of the month when Ethan would invariably visit. He was always busy, too busy to indulge in romance. Countless women had tried to seduce him, only to be coldly dismissed. Juliet was the only exception. No matter how busy he was, he would always set aside a specific time to see her, without fail. This consistency made everyone believe that she was truly special to him. But now, the maid looked at the disheveled Juliet, dressed in her pajamas, and after a long moment of hesitation, she couldn't help but speak up. "Miss Monroe, Mr. Blackwood will be here soon. Aren't you going to get ready?" Juliet stared at her own slightly haggard reflection in the mirror, her eyes vacant. Before, she used to count the days until Ethan's visit. She would buy all his favorite ingredients a day in advance, personally prepare a candlelight dinner, change into a sexy dress, and meticulously do her makeup, all in anticipation of his arrival. Back then, she truly believed he liked her, but now she knew the truth. He only came to see her, the counterfeit, once a month at a fixed time because he couldn't see the genuine article. Ethan arrived at dusk. As soon as he entered, he was met with darkness. He frowned and flipped the light switch. Just as he was about to ask why the lights were off, he saw Juliet sitting on the sofa and immediately sensed that something was wrong. Before he could speak, Juliet suddenly looked up at him, as if she had made a momentous decision. "Mr. Blackwood, let's break up." A heavy silence fell over the living room. Though no one spoke, Juliet could feel the oppressive atmosphere thickening around her. Ethan's brows furrowed. It took him several seconds to respond. "Why?" She took a slow breath, weaving together the excuse she had been preparing for days. "I'm getting older. I want to get married. My family has already found a prospective match for me. He's a good man with excellent prospects. So it's not appropriate for me to be with you anymore." After hearing her out, Ethan's frown deepened. He was usually inscrutable, but at this moment, Juliet could clearly see the suppressed anger in his eyes. He didn't love her, so why was he so angry at the thought of her getting married? The air grew so cold it felt like it could freeze. Just as Juliet was trying to figure out how to convince him, her phone suddenly rang. Seeing the caller ID, her heart skipped a beat. The phone kept ringing, making further conversation impossible. She had no choice but to answer it. As expected, her parents' wailing screams erupted from the other end. "You wretched girl, get over here right now. Your brother got into a fight and ended up in a police station. The other party is demanding $500,000 in compensation. Where are we supposed to get that kind of money? You need to come over here now." Her brother again at that moment. A wave of exhaustion and humiliation washed over Juliet. The conversation was forcibly cut short. She looked at Ethan, her face burning with shame. "Mr. Blackwood, please consider my proposal. I have something to attend to right now. I need to go out." With that, she rushed towards the door, but Ethan, as if seeing right through her, grabbed his car keys and took her hand. "I'll drive you." Without giving her any room to refuse, he pulled her into the car. $500,000 was a fortune to her family, but to Ethan, it was a mere drop in the bucket. In the end, without allowing Juliet to object, Ethan stepped in and quickly resolved the matter. David and Helen Monroe were, as always, mercenary. After getting their son out, they ushered Ethan into their home, their faces so full of gratitude they looked ready to kneel before him. Ethan glanced at the tea her parents served him and frowned slightly. Juliet knew he was used to the finer things in life and probably couldn't stomach their cheap, poorly made tea. Just as she was about to speak, she saw Ethan pick up the cup, take a sip, and then ask nonchalantly, "I heard you've arranged for Juliet to be married." Juliet's heart sank. She shot a desperate look at her parents, hoping they would understand her silent plea. But David and Helen exchanged a glance, first with surprise, then with an immediate denial. "A marriage prospect? What are you talking about? We don't have the connections to arrange something like that for her." The next moment, Ethan's gaze shifted to Juliet. "Oh, no arrangements?" David and Helen shot Juliet a harsh glare before quickly smiling and waving their hands. No, it's her good fortune that you've taken an interest in her. How could we dare to arrange a match for her? Exactly as long as you like her, she can stay with you for as long as you want." In just a few sentences, they had sold her out completely. Watching her own parents' shameless display of selling their daughter for personal gain, Juliet felt a chill creep into her heart. But a moment later, a bitter smile touched her lips. They had always been this way. What was she even hoping for? Chapter 4. As they were leaving the Monroe's house, Ethan gave her parents a sum of money. It was likely they wouldn't bother Juliet for a while. The matter was dropped completely. Ethan didn't seem to give it a second thought, assuming that she had only brought up leaving him because he had been too busy and had neglected her recently. Therefore, he deliberately cleared a portion of his work schedule to spend time with her. To make her happy, he had over 10,000 Russian white roses, specially imported and planted in the garden. All she had to do was open her window to see the budding roses. At night, as if to make up for his recent neglect, he was tender and passionate, leaving Juliet exhausted every time. In the dead of night, Juliet looked at his sleeping profile and thought again and again of the dream, of how he had relentlessly pushed her into a corner for Serafina's sake. What kind of person was he? He clearly didn't love her, yet he could act as if she was the only one for him. Lying in his arms, Juliet felt a sinister chill seep into her, making her cold to the bone. Sensing her low spirits, Ethan wrapped his arms around her from behind after his shower one day, his tone as doting as ever. "You've been upset for a week, still not in a good mood. Didn't you always want to go to Maple Ridge to see the sunset? I'll take you tomorrow, how about that?" A long time ago, she had indeed mentioned wanting to see the sunset from the mountain, but he had always been too busy with work. Over time, she had forgotten about it. She never expected him to remember after all this time. But now, she had lost all desire to go. Just as she was thinking of how to refuse, Ethan's kisses fell on her neck again. "You know I like it best when you're obedient." At that moment, she swallowed her refusal, not daring to anger him further. The next day, because Ethan had a meeting to attend, she had to go to Maple Ridge alone ahead of time. When she reached the summit, the sun was just beginning to set. The sunset would probably be visible in less than half an hour. She sat on the mountaintop and waited. She waited until the sun had completely set, but Ethan never appeared. The wind on the summit was strong, and she was only wearing a blouse. She shivered from the cold. She tried calling him, but no one answered. With no other choice, Juliet started down the mountain alone. The way down was long. She stumbled in the dark, falling several times. By the time she finally reached the bottom, her whole body ached. She had planned to just endure it, but a throbbing pain in her lower abdomen made her uneasy. In the end, she had to take a taxi to the hospital emergency room by herself. After the examination, she sat in the hallway waiting for the results. Ethan still hadn't returned her call. Although he was a man of few words, he always kept his promises to her. He wouldn't just stand her up. For some reason, a bad feeling washed over her. She unlocked her phone, intending to send him a message, when a breaking news alert popped up on her screen. Her hand trembled as she tapped on it. The homepage of the news article featured a high-definition photo taken at the airport, and the two people in the photo were none other than Ethan Blackwood and Serafina Vance. In their 6 years together, she had never seen him look at anyone like that. Under the flashing lights of the cameras, he held Serafina in his arms, wrapped in his overcoat, as if protecting a priceless treasure. The comments section exploded with excitement. "This is the powerful tycoon, and his idealized first love. We want to see movie stars have nothing on this." Juliet's hand trembled, and she almost dropped her phone. Serafina was back in the country. According to the plot of the novel, after Serafina's return, the next step in the story was. Suddenly, the doctor in the office called her name. Her mind was a mess. She turned off her phone and walked in. When the doctor saw her, he handed her the blood test results. "Miss Monroe, congratulations. You're pregnant." Chapter 5. On the way back from the hospital, Juliet stared out the window at the rapidly passing trees, her heart like a ship lost at sea, tossed about by the waves without a harbor in sight. Serafina's return, her pregnancy, everything was unfolding exactly as it had in her dream. Time was running out. No matter how much she loved Ethan, seeing those 13-14 photos should have been enough to kill any hope. From the very beginning, she was just a supporting character in this novel. She should never have hoped for any genuine affection from Ethan. If she didn't leave now, she would only end up with the same gruesome fate as in the story. She thought about trying to talk to Ethan again, but ever since Serafina's return, it was as if he had completely forgotten her existence. He never showed up. He never even mentioned the time he stood her up. A sharp pain pierced her heart. Of course, the leading lady was back, so the stand-in was no longer needed, right? Juliet could only learn about his and Serafina's life through the news. The usually private and composed Ethan Blackwood had thrown a grand welcome banquet for Serafina at Crestview's most luxurious club, inviting all the elite and powerful figures in their circle. It was said that not only did he hire a famous pop star to perform, but he also personally played the piano, all to win a smile from Serafina. And to help Serafina quickly reintegrate into the social scene, Ethan would invite her as his partner to every banquet and event. Before, it was Juliet who would hold his arm and stand by his side. But now, that person was Serafina. Ever since she became pregnant, her appetite had been poor. She couldn't eat or sleep well, and as a result, she had lost a lot of weight. The maid would look at her with unspoken words, several times hinting at whether she was pregnant, but Juliet always managed to deflect the questions. One night, Ethan unexpectedly came home. Juliet immediately brought up the breakup. She refused to accept a fate where she would die a horrible death, nor could she bear to watch him and Serafina be affectionate with each other day after day. Now that Serafina was back, he should be willing to let her go this time. "Mr. Blackwood, can we break up?" But upon hearing her words, he simply loosened his tie, his face cold and displeased as he glared at her. "Juliet Monroe, the first time, I could have dismissed it as you throwing a tantrum. A second time is just getting old. If it's about money, here's a supplementary card with no limit. You can take it and use it as you please." Juliet's heart ached. In his mind, Serafina was pure and flawless, not to be sullied. And she was just a little toy he could easily dismiss with money. She didn't reach for the card. She shook her head, uncharacteristically stubborn. "I don't want anything." Anger flared in Ethan's eyes. He looked at her coldly, his tone arrogant. "I'm warning you, if you're leaving me to marry some other man, the moment you dare to get married, I will make sure he is utterly ruined." With those chilling words, he stormed out. Juliet watched his retreating back, stunned. The person he loved most was Serafina, and she was back now. So why was he still keeping her, the stand-in, around? The dream had been a fleeting glimpse, and the details were hazy, but she was certain of one thing. Ethan was keeping her for reasons other than love. For now, she could only take things one step at a time. She barely slept that night. Just as dawn broke and she was finally feeling drowsy, the maid came knocking frantically at her door. "Miss Monroe, you need to come downstairs, quickly. Some people just showed up and are making a huge mess, shouting and threatening everyone." "It's a complete panic. I don't know what to do." Juliet's sleepiness vanished instantly. She threw on a coat and rushed out of her room. As she reached the landing of the stairs in the living room, she saw two people sitting on the sofa, shoes off, eating and drinking with abandon. Chapter 6. The moment they saw her, David and Helen Monroe leaped from the sofa, rushed up to Juliet, and slapped her hard across the face. "You worthless brat living it up in this villa, eating and drinking the best, while you couldn't care less about your own parents and brother. Is that it? How did we ever raise such an ungrateful wretch?" The slap left Juliet dizzy, and she nearly lost her balance. The maid quickly rushed forward to support her. "Why are you hitting her?" her parents sneered. "I'm hitting my own daughter. What's it to you? This wretched girl, we asked you for money to buy your brother a car, and you kept putting us off. Now you're living in this fancy villa, you think you've grown wings, do you? You don't give a damn about your own parents." Juliet clutched her numb cheek, taking a long moment to steady herself. She first signaled for the maid to leave, then looked at the two aggressive figures before her, her eyes red. "Mom, Dad, I've told you so many times, nothing here is mine. It doesn't belong to me. I don't have any extra money for you. Besides, he's too young for a car. Can't you just give it a rest?" Ever since she was young, she had to work while studying. The money she earned was split between her tuition and giving some to her parents. Over the years, they had squeezed countless amounts of money from her. Ethan had just given them a sum, and now they had the audacity to come back for more. Had they ever treated her like a daughter? She was nothing more than an ATM to them. If it weren't for her relationship with Ethan, which gave her some value, they probably would have sold her off to someone else long after she graduated. Her parents grew even more furious at her words. They started throwing things from the table onto the floor, screaming and cursing her relentlessly. "Oh, look at this, our daughter's all grown up and won't listen to us anymore. We worked so hard to raise you, and now that you're rich, you disown your own parents, you ungrateful wretch. You're so wealthy. What's wrong with giving a little money to your brother? You, with your fancy cars and villa, you rotten girl. We should have never had you, we should have just let you die." Juliet watched them blankly as they screamed and cried in front of her. The image of her falling into the abyss from her dream flashed through her mind. If she really died, her parents probably wouldn't even care. They would only lament the loss of the cash cow they could no longer exploit. Their usual theatrics of crying and threatening might have worked on her before, but after that dream, she no longer cared. Seeing that she wasn't reacting, the couple lunged at her, slapping her several more times. Finally, when she still refused to give in, they stormed out, cursing as they went. "Fine, you won't give us the money, right?" "Fine, we'll go ask Mr. Blackwood for it." Hearing this, Juliet's heart skipped a beat. She was about to chase after them, but they were already gone. Even though she was determined to cut ties with Ethan, she didn't want her parents to cause a scene at the Blackwood Corporation and utterly humiliate her. Juliet frantically pulled her phone from her pocket and dialed Ethan's number. The call was answered after 3 rings. She spoke, her voice a mixture of urgency and shame. "Mr. Blackwood, my parents are on their way to the Blackwood Corporation. Can you have someone stop them downstairs?" There was a moment of silence on the other end, followed by a slightly arrogant female voice. "This is Serafina Vance. Ethan is in a meeting. Who is this?" Chapter 7, Juliet froze for a moment. When she came to her senses, she immediately hung up the phone. She didn't know why, but she felt an instinctive urge to hide from Serafina. Serafina was the revered first love, high and mighty, while she was just a lowly substitute from the mud. Ethan never took her to his company. No matter how much he pampered her, he always kept his personal and professional lives separate. But Serafina was different. Now, her only option was to drive to the Blackwood Corporation herself and try to intercept her parents before they arrived. She had actually gotten her driver's license in college, but being with Ethan, she rarely needed to drive, so she was out of practice. Now, back behind the wheel, she was a nervous wreck. Anxious and distracted, she hadn't been driving for long when she crashed into a guardrail on the side of the road, and the engine stalled. Juliet was dizzy and disoriented. It wasn't until the ambulance arrived and took her to the hospital that she gradually regained consciousness. The doctor, seeing she was awake, couldn't help but scold her. "If you don't know how to drive, you shouldn't be on the road. You're lucky the baby is okay. Otherwise, you would have harmed both yourself and your child. Right now, it's just some scrapes. If it had been any more serious, you could have lost the baby." Juliet instinctively placed a hand on her stomach, feeling a mix of guilt and sadness. She fought back tears and apologized to the doctor. "I'm sorry, I was in a hurry today." The doctor gave her a few more instructions before leaving. Alone in the room, she anxiously looked for her phone, wanting to call and find out what had happened with her parents, but she didn't know who to call. What if she called Ethan and Serafina was still with him? As she hesitated, her phone suddenly rang. It was Ethan's number. She answered nervously, but before she could speak, Ethan's voice, sharp with accusation, came through. "What do you think you're doing? Did you call just now to deliberately make Serafina misunderstand?" In that moment, Juliet didn't know which hurt more, her physical injuries or her heart. She squeezed her eyes shut as tears streamed silently down her face. Just as she was about to say it wasn't intentional, she heard Ethan continue coldly. "From now on, don't call me again. I'll come to you when I need to. As for your parents, I've already given them some money and sent them away. Juliet Monroe, maybe you should reflect on what you've done to push your own parents to this point." With that, Ethan hung up without a second thought. The dial tone droned in her ear as Juliet's hand fell limply to her side. She remembered a long time ago, Ethan had told her that as long as he was around, no one could bully her. But now, his heart was completely devoted to Serafina, so much so that he even believed her blood-sucking parents when they slandered her. The way things were going, it was only a matter of time before he grew to despise her completely. Leaving now was the best option, but Ethan refused to let her go. After 3 days in the hospital, she was discharged and returned home. Ethan hadn't called at all during those days. He probably never even knew she had been in a car accident. The maid handed her an invitation that had arrived while she was in the hospital. It was from the daughter of the Davis family, a socialite she had met once, inviting her to a birthday party. She didn't know Miss Davis well, but since she had been invited, she felt obligated to go. In the past, Ethan had always accompanied her to such events. Now, she would have to go alone. That evening, she chose a simple, white, form-fitting slip dress for the party. Given her current situation, she didn't want to draw too much attention to herself. She entered the venue, greeted Miss Davis, and then quietly found a corner to sit in. The party was filled with the sons and daughters of prominent families. Someone of her status meant nothing here. Just then, the previously quiet venue suddenly became boisterous. A commotion at the entrance drew everyone's attention. Amidst the anticipation, Ethan Blackwood made a grand entrance with a lavishly dressed Serafina Vance on his arm. Chapter 8, Juliet's heart skipped a beat. This was the first time she had seen Serafina in person. In photos, they looked 80% similar, but seeing her now, the difference was clear at a glance. Serafina was proud, dazzling like a peacock showing off its feathers. With every move, she captivated everyone's attention. No wonder Ethan was so madly in love with her, so lost in his obsession. He was even willing to drive the woman who had been with him for 6 years, the mother of his child, to her death. Recalling the gruesome scene of her death from the dream, the pain washed over her again. Everyone flocked to Ethan and Serafina, and the same people who had once fawned over Juliet now changed their tune completely. Miss Vance is truly in a league of her own. She outshines everyone the moment she walks in. No wonder they say there's a difference between the fake and the genuine article. Juliet Monroe was only propped up by those expensive clothes and jewelry. She can't compare to Miss Vance at all. Miss Vance is a true heiress, a perfect match for President Blackwood since childhood. A lowly substitute like Juliet Monroe isn't even worth mentioning. In that moment, Juliet instantly understood why Miss Davis had sent her an invitation. It was all just a setup to humiliate her, the counterfeit, in front of everyone. Their scornful gazes felt like sharp knives piercing her from all directions. Juliet felt as if she was being torn apart. Just then, Ethan finally noticed her. He frowned and shot a look at the crowd, a flicker of anger in his cold eyes. He lowered his head, his thin lips pressed into a hard line. Every word that escaped was laced with a chilling coldness. "Say one more word and get the hell out of here." The crowd froze, falling into a dead silence. No one dared to utter another word. Serafina's beautiful face changed slightly. She looked at Ethan in surprise. "Ethan, are you defending that woman?" He glanced at the uncomfortable Juliet in the corner and remained silent for a few seconds before saying, "She's just a counterfeit. I just don't want her name to dirty your ears." Hearing this, Serafina's smile returned, and she looked pleased. Even though she already knew she was just a substitute, hearing the word come from his mouth still felt like a dagger twisting in her heart. She couldn't bear to stay any longer. She hastily got up to leave, but as she did, someone stepped on her dress. She stumbled and crashed into the dessert table. As the desserts on the table came crashing down, everyone's eyes turned to the disheveled Juliet on the floor. Their disdain and disgust were palpable. Seeing her covered in cream and in such a pathetic state, they burst into laughter. Juliet's face burned as if it were branded. She kept her head down, feeling their gazes like sharp knives stabbing at her. And not far away, Ethan stood with Serafina on his arm, watching her coldly as if she were a stranger. Fine. This was fine. Juliet laughed at herself mockingly, then struggled to her feet. She took off her high heels and, barefoot, fled the scene. She caught a cold from being exposed to the elements, and being pregnant, couldn't take any medication. She had to endure the fever. In her feverish delirium, Juliet thought she saw Ethan. He was uncharacteristically gentle, just like he used to be before Serafina returned, personally placing a cold compress on her forehead to bring down the fever. The room was freezing, and she couldn't stop shivering. Ethan turned up the thermostat and held her tightly. After some time, he tried to give her some fever medicine. Juliet suddenly became lucid. She forcefully pushed away the spoon that was at her lips and coughed violently. She knew then that this was not a dream. The spoon clattered to the floor. She stared at him with red, feverish eyes. "Ethan Blackwood, can you just let me go?" His brows knitted together, his tone as firm and cold as ever. "No, I will never let you go." Ethan stayed by her side all night. It wasn't until dawn that her fever finally broke. He brought her a bowl of congee that the maid had prepared and fed it to her, one small spoonful at a time. Juliet looked at the man before her, feeling utterly exhausted, both mentally and physically. Did he really intend to push her to the same end as in the novel before he would be satisfied? Looking at him, she forced down the pain in her heart and said, "If you stay here with me, won't Miss Vance be angry?" Ethan was silent for a few seconds, then put down the bowl. "Today is your birthday. Of course I have to be with you. Birthday." Juliet was stunned for a long moment before she remembered that it was indeed her birthday. Her birthday had never been important. Her parents had never celebrated it for her. In the 6 years she had been with Ethan, he was the one who had always celebrated with her. But now, didn't he have Serafina? Chapter 9. Juliet didn't know what he was thinking. She could only watch as he had the maids decorate the room in a festive manner. As if to compensate her, he had his assistant order a full set of 8-figure jewelry for her. He sat with her at the table, waiting for the maids to bring out the cake. He said he wanted to blow out the candles with her and make all her wishes come true. The cake was brought to the table, and at the same time, Ethan's phone rang. It was the special ringtone he had for Serafina. Juliet knew. Sure enough, he answered the phone, and his expression changed immediately. "Don't be scared, sweetheart, I'm on my way." After hanging up, he didn't even have time to explain. He grabbed his coat and rushed to the door. Juliet didn't know where she found the courage, but as if to test something, she reached out and grabbed his arm. "Didn't you say you were going to celebrate my birthday with me?" Ethan shot her a look, his brow furrowed, as if he found her ridiculous. He shook her off and strode away without looking back. Watching his retreating back, Juliet felt a chill run through her. Yes, how ridiculous of her. For a moment, she had actually thought that the 6 years she had spent with him might not have been completely worthless. But she had forgotten that in the novel, from beginning to end, the male lead only ever loved the female lead. She was just a stand-in, a disposable character. After what felt like an eternity, she picked up a match with a self-deprecating smile and slowly lit the candles. As she watched the candles burn down, a crazy idea began to form in her mind. Since there was no way to leave Ethan Blackwood, there was only one option left: fake her own death. The moment the thought occurred to her, her heart began to pound violently. Yes, if she faked her death and escaped, then the subsequent events of the novel might not happen. This was the only way she could escape the tragic fate that awaited her in the story. The male lead will always love the female lead. She, a disposable character, shouldn't get involved in their epic love story. She, Juliet Monroe, deserved to have her own life. With this thought, she made her decision and immediately began to set her plan in motion. At 11:00 p.m., she made a call to arrange for a fake corpse. At 11:30 p.m., she doused every corner of the house with gasoline, including the 10,000 white roses in the garden that he had once planted for her. At 11:59 p.m., she took one last look at the place she had lived in for 6 years. At 12:00 a.m. sharp, she struck a match and gently tossed it into the garden. The moment the fire erupted, she turned and walked away, never looking back. After taking Serafina to the hospital, Ethan rushed back. For some reason, the way Juliet had looked at him when he left, with such detachment, made him feel an inexplicable sense of panic. She had never been like that before, but lately, he felt as if she had changed. As his car got closer to the villa, he saw a massive fire lighting up the sky. In that instant, his heart seized. The fire was coming from the direction of the villa where Juliet lived. At the airport, after checking in her luggage, Juliet went to the waiting area to rest. A few passengers who had just arrived from Crestview were gathered nearby, complaining and gossiping. "It's true what they say, money really can buy anything these days. I heard that you couldn't even find a doctor in Crestview today because some big shot's villa caught fire, and he called every single doctor in the city to his house to help. That's so arrogant, treating ordinary people like they're nothing. I wonder who this big shot is." Juliet couldn't help but turn to look, and an incredible thought crossed her mind. Only one person would be arrogant enough to do something like that, but just as quickly, she dismissed the idea. Impossible. He was probably with Serafina right now. He probably didn't even know she had been burned to death. And even if he did know, why would he go to such great lengths for her? She had no illusions about him anymore. The boarding announcement came over the airport speakers. She picked up her bag, stood up, and on her way, snapped her SIM card in half and threw it into a trash can. As the plane took off, she looked at the white clouds outside the window, a feeling of liberation washing over her. Goodbye, Ethan Blackwood. From this day forward, there is no Juliet Monroe in this world. Chapter 10, 3 years later. On the massive screen in the Central Plaza, an interview with the most prominent entrepreneur of the moment was being broadcast. Today's guest was the renowned CEO of the Blackwood Corporation, Ethan Blackwood. Dressed in a black, subtly patterned suit, he leaned back slightly on the sofa, his long fingers interlaced, as he answered the host's questions with composure and grace. Juliet, holding the hand of a precious little girl, stood in the city center plaza. Seeing the handsome man on the screen, she couldn't help but stop. For some reason, she felt that the Ethan Blackwood of today seemed different. He was as cold and handsome as ever, but when he occasionally looked up, his eyes were filled with a deep melancholy. As he bent down to pick up a glass of water, a small part of his forearm was revealed. On his well-defined wrist, there was a stark scar, as if from a deep cut. Even though it had healed, it was still shocking to see. Juliet's heart skipped a beat as she looked at it. The wound looked so much like a suicide attempt. The host was asking a question. "Mr. Blackwood, you and Miss Serafina Vance of the Vance Group have been childhood sweethearts and have been together for many years. But we have yet to hear any news of a wedding. When do you two plan to get married?" Hearing this question, Ethan's expression suddenly darkened. He didn't answer. Instead, he stood up with a cold face and walked away. After that, the interview descended into chaos, and a commercial break was inserted. Juliet felt as if her heart had been struck. It was a long time before she finally came back to her senses. He still hadn't married Serafina. How was that possible? 3 years had passed. According to the plot of the novel, they should have had their fairy tale ending by now, living a happy married life. For some reason, she felt a growing sense of unease. It wasn't until little Bella tugged at her sleeve that she snapped out of it. She picked up her daughter, got into the car, and headed to the import supermarket as planned. Bella was 2 years old now, a time when she was curious about everything. Once inside the supermarket, she wrapped her arms around Juliet's neck and asked, "Mommy, who is that uncle? Why were you staring at him for so long?" Juliet had already regained her composure. She gently stroked Bella's cheek and explained, "Mommy doesn't know him either." Bella smiled sweetly. "Then does Mommy think that uncle is handsome? Does Mommy like that uncle?" Juliet laughed and tickled her daughter's sides. "Nonsense. Mommy only likes Bella." The mother and daughter were laughing together when they accidentally knocked over an entire shelf behind them. A wall of stacked cans came crashing down, and everyone in the supermarket turned to look. Juliet, holding her daughter, was mortified. Just as she was about to apologize, she felt an incredulous gaze, sharp as a knife, pierce through her. The temperature around her seemed to drop several degrees in an instant. As if sensing something, she looked up and her eyes met those of the cold, noble man standing opposite her. In that instant, she felt as if she had been struck by lightning. Ethan Blackwood chapter 11 3 years of time seemed to freeze in that single moment. Ethan couldn't believe his eyes. He held his breath, staring blankly at her, the atmosphere solidifying. The light music playing in the store, the surprised gasps of the staff, and the surrounding buzz of chatter all faded into nothingness, completely blocked out by his brain. But no matter how he looked, how he thought, it was the face he had yearned for, day and night for 3 long years. The moment he had learned that Juliet had died in the fire, Ethan had been struck by lightning, frozen in place. His hands had trembled uncontrollably. The body he had once caressed, kissed, and left his mark on was now burned beyond recognition. She had been curled up, looking as if she had been in extreme agony. The sight had haunted his nightmares for 3 years. Before he had left that day, he had been pondering why Juliet had become so important to him, why her every smile, every frown, every joy, and every sorrow had, without him even realizing it, begun to affect him so deeply. He loved Serafina, didn't he? Before he could find an answer, fate had played a cruel joke on him. That fire still burned in his heart, a constant torment that kept him awake night after night. But now, someone please tell him, why was the Juliet from his dreams and hallucinations, the Juliet who had burned to death, the Juliet he had personally buried, standing right in front of him, perfectly fine? An involuntary shiver ran down Ethan's spine. Just as he was about to take a step forward, she looked at him as if she had seen a ghost, took a step back, and quickly turned and ran. "Hey ma'am," the store clerk called out in frustration, but the woman had already disappeared, running as if a demon was chasing her. It took Ethan a moment to process what had just happened. His expression twisted as understanding dawned on him. That body was a fake to escape from him. Juliet had somehow found a corpse, or perhaps even a living person willing to die in her place, and staged her death in the fire. He had been played. But Ethan felt no anger, only a wild, ecstatic joy. His eyes were fixed on her retreating figure, but he felt no urge to chase after her. As long as he knew she was alive, he could find her. Ethan strode out of the store. Juliet hid behind a shelf, not daring to breathe. 3 years ago, when she had faked her death, she hadn't thought about what she would do if they ever met again. Now, seeing him, her first reaction was still guilt. She looked at Bella, who was blinking her large, curious eyes, and held her tight. This was her precious baby, the child she had carried for 10 months and raised with so much love. She was the most important person in her life. According to the dream, Ethan, who still hadn't married Serafina, would definitely come for this child. Chapter 12, his and Serafina's issue was only because of the child. The Blackwood family couldn't accept it, for now Juliet could hardly imagine the pain of having Bella taken from her. The Juliet in her dream was the loneliest person in the world, with no one on her side, not even her own child, who preferred the so-called female lead. And she could do nothing about it. Juliet clenched her jaw, a fine sheen of cold sweat on her forehead. A small, soft hand gently touched her face. Bella wrapped her arms around her neck and said in a sweet, childish voice, "Mommy, what's wrong?" As if pulled from a hellish memory, Juliet let out a sharp breath. She guiltily nuzzled Bella's soft cheek and whispered, "It's nothing, baby. Mommy just saw someone very scary." "Was it that uncle?" Bella blinked her big eyes and raised a tiny fist. "Don't be scared, Mommy. I'll protect you." Bella's reassurance was like a soothing balm, calming Juliet's frantic heart and strengthening her resolve to protect her. She first carried Bella over to the clerk she had spoken to earlier and apologized. The clerk, seeing her with a child, softened her expression, though she still sounded a bit exasperated. "The supermarket has a budget for damages, so you don't need to pay. But please be careful. Next time, what if you had slipped on the cans while running with her?" Juliet was deeply moved by the stranger's kindness. She bowed repeatedly, and Bella added obediently, "I'm sorry, ma'am. It was my fault for playing with Mommy and knocking everything over." It's all right," the stalker said, now a bit embarrassed. Juliet insisted on pressing $50 into her hand, which she only accepted after much refusal. "Bye-bye, sweetie." "Bye-bye, ma'am." Bella was a very well-behaved child, and Juliet sighed with relief. In fact, the past 3 years hadn't been too bad for Juliet. She had sold the valuables she had received from Ethan and saved up a considerable amount of money. It was at least enough to raise Bella. And Bella was a good child. She rarely got sick from being mischievous. In 2 years, the worst she had was a cold or a fever, which allowed Juliet to maintain a balance between her income and expenses. After faking her death and cutting ties with her parents, Juliet, who had been leeched off of her whole life, had started her own small business and was no longer living hand to mouth. Carrying the cheese sticks Bella wanted and some groceries, Juliet got into the car. She placed Bella in her car seat and gave her a kiss on the cheek. The child was already getting sleepy. After fastening her seatbelt, she said sweetly, "Thank you, Mommy. And thank you, Bella." Without her, Juliet might not have faced life with such positivity. She had become strong, brave, and willing to take on the responsibilities on her shoulders and face new challenges. Chapter 13, her family of origin had taught her that a girl's purpose was to struggle for her brother, because the brother was the pillar of the family. So, Juliet decided that regardless of whether she would ever meet someone she loved again, she would never have a second child. Bella would be her own pillar. No one would ever take away the love she had for Bella. Juliet shook her head, clearing her mind of the chaotic thoughts. She planned to book a flight as soon as she got home. Although it was only a matter of time before Ethan found her, she still wanted to go into hiding for a while. Maybe, with time, Ethan would forget about her. But just thinking about the look in his eyes when they met in the supermarket, Juliet knew that was unlikely. Ethan's gaze was like a burning torch. He was like a starved beast that had finally found its prey, which was why Juliet had run without a second thought. She was afraid Ethan would discover her secret, afraid he would take Bella away. Even more, she was afraid of ending up like in her dream, abandoned by everyone, with no one to turn to, ultimately forced to jump to her death. As the car pulled up to her apartment building, Bella woke up as if on cue and instinctively asked to be held. Bella never used to ask to be held when she had groceries, so Juliet had to go around to the back, get her out, and pick her up. "What's wrong, Bella?" Bella buried her face in her mother's shoulder, clearly frightened. Juliet looked at the groceries in the trunk with some difficulty, realizing she would have to make another trip down later. "Juliet?" A clear, young male voice called out. Juliet looked over and saw the young man, who had just moved in next door last week. She gave him a slightly awkward smile. "Hello, are you having trouble? Let me help." Since they were neighbors and going up together, Juliet didn't refuse. She watched as the man effortlessly lifted the shopping basket filled with groceries and snacks and thanked him repeatedly. He waved it off with a bright, friendly smile. "It's nothing, I haven't even done my arm workout today. This counts as lifting." They walked to the elevator and swiped their cards to go up. Bella peeked out from her mother's shoulder and, seeing her snacks in the hands of a strange man, pouted. "Who are you?" "Bella," Juliet said, embarrassed. "The nice young man is helping us carry things." "Don't be rude," the man pointed to himself. "Why are you calling me young man? That makes me sound old." "Oh, right, Juliet, I haven't introduced myself yet. My name is Lucchese." "Hey, sweetie, can I have one of your cheese sticks?" Bella looked reluctantly at the basket. "Okay, but not the strawberry one." The elevator dinged, reaching their floor. Luke playfully teased Bella and hung the groceries on their doorknob. Chapter 14, "All right, Juliet, I'm heading back." "Goodbye, Luke." It wasn't until Luke had gone back to his apartment that Juliet entered the code to her door. It wasn't that she was overly cautious, but as a single mother, she had to have extra layers of security. Luke didn't seem to mind, clearly aware of her situation, and left without saying anything more. The moment she closed and locked the door behind her, Juliet finally let her guard down. Let Ethan search all he wanted. This apartment wasn't registered in her name, but in Bella's. Even with all his resources, he wouldn't be able to find this place so quickly. But as she looked at Bella sitting on the carpet, unwrapping a cheese stick, Juliet knew she had to be prepared. It was still too early for dinner. Juliet sat across from Bella, her legs stretched out to form a circle around her. It was a position they both loved, allowing them to be face-to-face and close while they talked. "Mommy, have some?" The cheese stick she put in her mouth was Bella's favorite strawberry flavor. A warmth spread through Juliet's heart. She kissed Bella's cheek, their breaths filled with the same sweet scent. "Bella, were you a little scared when you woke up just now?" Bella looked a bit confused by the question. A child's emotions come and go quickly. The memory of the elevator ride with Luke had already pushed away her earlier fears. It took her a moment to nod. "Mommy, I was a little scared when we were hiding from that uncle in the supermarket." Juliet hadn't realized how sensitive Bella was to her emotions. Bella didn't know who Ethan was. She was only scared because her mother was scared. She hugged Bella and said, "Don't worry, don't worry. Do you remember the picture book Mommy drew?" "I remember, good. In the book, the little squirrel was very scared of winter, wasn't he? Because it was his first winter. But why wasn't he scared later? Because his mommy squirrel told him that if he gathered enough acorns and chestnuts in the spring, summer, and fall, he wouldn't be hungry in the winter." "That's right," Juliet said with a smile. So, Mommy was only scared because it was the first time she saw that uncle. The second time, she won't be. If we're prepared to face him, he won't be scary, okay? That was a bit too long for Bella to understand completely. She blinked her big eyes at Juliet. But because it was her favorite story, she still raised her little arms high. "Okay," Juliet had already come up with a plan on the way home. Her fear of Ethan finding them was all about him taking Bella away. But if she insisted that the child was someone else's and kept Bella away from him so he couldn't do a paternity test, she could keep the truth hidden for a while. So, she needed to create another father in Bella's memory. Chapter 15, for 2 years, Juliet had never mentioned anything about a father to Bella. She wasn't sure if the little girl could accept it all at once. She held her and said, "Bella, if you could have a daddy, what would you want him to be like?" "I want a daddy who likes to smile and is very tall." To her surprise, Bella answered quickly. Juliet gently prodded, "What else?" He can't get mad at me for little things, and he can't lie to me. If he says he's going to buy me yummy snacks today, he has to do it." Whether it was ingrained in her DNA, Bella's answer completely avoided anything that resembled Ethan's character. He didn't smile much, could be very stern, and would go to great lengths to deceive people to get what he wanted. Juliet couldn't help but chuckle. But to make the story convincing enough for even Ethan to believe, Bella's simple description wasn't enough. She guided her gently, and after a while she had instilled in Bella an image of a fantasy daddy. Bella frowned, her expression serious. After a moment of thought, she said with some confusion, "Mommy, I think the person you're describing sounds a bit like the young man we met in the elevator." Juliet was taken aback and waved her hands in embarrassment. No. Well, I guess you could say that. So, we have a deal. From now on, if anyone asks who your daddy is, you'll tell them this story, okay? Okay, in Bella's eyes, the world was simple. She thought this was just a game her mother was playing with her, and happily agreed. Juliet felt a little more at ease. She let Bella look at her picture books while she went to the kitchen to prepare dinner. She checked for flights, but it seemed that with the upcoming tourist season, tickets to any city were quite expensive. Plus, traveling with a young child was difficult. As she was worrying, she heard a soft knock on the door. A sudden instinct made Juliet hold her breath. She quickly turned off the range hood and gestured for Bella in the living room to be quiet. She tiptoed to the door. Through the peephole, she saw an unfamiliar man knocking respectfully. Even though she didn't open the door, he continued to knock at a steady, unhurried pace. No one would come looking for her at this hour. With such persistence, Juliet ran to the floor-to-ceiling window and peeked down. Her eyes almost met Ethan's as he leaned against his car, looking up. He was lighting a cigarette, his expression calm, as if he was certain she was home. She had underestimated him again. The knocking was like a death knell, each rap falling heavily on Juliet's heart. Her face paled as she looked at the clueless Bella on the floor. For a moment, she even wanted to hide her in the closet. Just then, she heard the door next door creak open, followed by Luke's extremely annoyed voice. "What are you doing? It's so loud, I'm sorry," the man said politely. "I'm looking for Miss Monroe who lives here." Knock, knock, knock. She left early this morning and isn't back yet. What are you knocking for? How did you even get in? Don't you know to call someone first? You better watch out or I'll call security on you. Juliet's heart warmed. The man, hearing this, sounded embarrassed and said softly, "I'm sorry, sir." Then came the sound of footsteps on the stairs. He didn't have a key card for this floor. He had actually climbed the stairs. This was the 23rd floor. Chapter 16, with the immediate crisis averted, Juliet let out a sharp breath. She hesitated, wondering if she should open the door to thank Luke. But he quietly approached her door and spoke to the electronic peephole. "Juliet, you don't need to come out." Juliet murmured an okay, looking at his magnified face in the camera, and for some reason she felt like laughing. Luke fumbled with his phone for a moment and then held it up. "This is my number. Add me on the messaging app. If you need anything, just send me a message." He seemed so bright and friendly that Juliet couldn't bring herself to refuse. She took a screenshot, entered his number into her messaging app's search bar, and successfully added him as a contact. Only then did Luke return to his apartment. "I'm a chronic internet addict, so if you ever need help, just let me know," Juliet laughed and sent him the screenshot from the peephole. The picture had a fisheye lens effect. Luke was tall and handsome, and even with the distortion, he didn't look bad. He actually looked kind of cute. He sent back a crying emoji. "So ugly." "Not ugly at all, you look great," Juliet said sincerely. "Don't be so hard on yourself." Then, she saw his profile picture change to the screenshot. Juliet couldn't stop laughing. Bella, who had been playing by herself, was drawn by her mother's laughter and came over, resting her head on Juliet's lap and looking on curiously. "Mommy, I want to take a picture like that too." Okay, but it's too late today. How about tomorrow?" Okay, Juliet's relief didn't last long. She knew Ethan's personality. Now that he had found her, he wouldn't give up easily. She could hide for a while, but not forever. She couldn't let Bella live her whole life in this state of constant anxiety. Juliet thought for a long time. Bella was too young to be left alone for long, but she didn't trust anyone else to look after her. Just then, her phone beeped. "Hey, can you tell me who that guy was who came to the door today? It'll be easier for me to handle it if he comes back." Should she tell him? For nearly 2 years, Juliet had lived in a relatively isolated environment. She had almost no friends, and her family were like vampires, ready to suck her dry. After a moment's hesitation, she typed, "That was my ex-boyfriend. He doesn't know about Bella. If he finds out, he'll immediately fight me for custody. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk to him, but I don't want him to know Bella is here." "That's easy," Luke typed quickly. "I really like kids, especially Bella. Hey, I have younger siblings, so I've taken care of kids before. How about you let me watch Bella for the day? Juliet was still hesitant, but he added, if you're worried, we can have a video call open 24/7. I promise not a single hair on Bella's head will be out of place. Chapter 17, that won't be necessary. Juliet was amused again. Bella needs her formula and solid food. I'll prepare it tomorrow and leave it here. Besides, we have security cameras at home. Would you be willing to come over to my place? Of course, Luke was so enthusiastic. Juliet sighed softly. She had no idea that at that moment, the man was so excited he could barely sit still, pacing back and forth in his apartment. She doesn't have a husband. Luke was one step away from shadowboxing in the air. She invited me into her home. Juliet heard an angry knock on the wall from next door, followed by what sounded like a downstairs neighbor complaining. Then came Luke's apologetic and dejected voice. She couldn't contain her curiosity and sent him a message. What's wrong? I disturbed the downstairs neighbor. The soundproofing is terrible, Juliet smiled. It's okay, you'll move into a better place someday. These newer, cheaper apartment buildings are all like this. The walls are so thin. It's better for you renters. People like me who bought the place are the unlucky ones. But I bought my place. Luke sent a pouting emoji, which looked particularly amusing with his profile picture. Looks like we'll be long-term neighbors, Juliet. Luke looked to be only 24 or 25, yet he had already bought an apartment. Juliet was taken aback and couldn't help but ask, how old are you? 26. Just graduated with my PhD. Juliet was only 28 herself. She felt inadequate. She never would have guessed that the cheerful-looking Luke was so academically accomplished. After her bath, Bella obediently climbed into bed herself. Juliet told her, tomorrow, Mommy has to go out for a bit. A young man will come over to play with you, okay? Is it the young man from the elevator? Bella hugged her doll, her voice thick with sleep. As long as he doesn't take my cheese sticks. Juliet chuckled and tucked her in, then gently closed the door. She still remembered Ethan's phone number. For some reason, the string of numbers was firmly etched in her memory. No matter how much she tried to bury it, she could still recall it clearly. She took a deep breath, stood on the balcony, and dialed the number. Her palm was damp with sweat. Before she could mentally prepare herself, the ringing stopped instantly. All she could hear was the sound of steady, deep breathing from the other end. Juliet, Ethan's voice trembled slightly as he spoke. He dug his nails into his palm, forcing himself to remain calm. Speak, I know it's you. It's me. Chapter 18. Surprisingly, hearing his familiar voice, Juliet felt herself calm down. She knew Ethan too well enough to realize that he was just putting on a brave face. He was terrified she would hang up. With the upper hand, Juliet's thoughts cleared. Ethan's breathing was ragged. It took him a long moment to say, where have you been these past 3 years? His first question wasn't an accusation. Juliet said softly, that doesn't really have anything to do with you, does it? But I'm curious, why are you looking for me? You know I came to your place? The security guard told me. Juliet subconsciously avoided mentioning Luke. She continued, don't change the subject. What do you want? Ethan took a deep breath, his voice hoarse. I want to see you. Juliet had never expected that answer. She almost thought she had misunderstood him, but he continued, I miss you, Juliet. The name condensed 3 years of time into a single moment. For a second, Juliet almost thought she was hearing the tender words he used to say when she was still deeply in love with him. But she snapped back to reality in an instant. Outside the window, thousands of lights flickered. Juliet said softly, oh, is that so? Then what about Miss Vance? It's over between us, Ethan said quickly. Juliet, It wasn't until after we separated that I realized I love you. It felt like a lifetime ago. Juliet was completely stunned. She didn't understand why things weren't following the plot of her dream, why Ethan's goal was love instead of revenge. A storm of emotions left her speechless. Ethan, thinking she didn't believe him, felt a pang of despair. Believe me, Juliet, Ethan's voice was very low. Don't hang up, please. The moment I saw that body, it felt like my world was collapsing. These past 3 years, I haven't been with anyone. I rejected the arranged marriage between the Vance and Blackwood families. I really fell in love with you, I swear. It felt like a surreal dream. Juliet listened to his unbelievable words, unable to process them for a long time. But what washed over her wasn't happiness, but a deep, cold sense of falsehood. Ethan was willing to go to such lengths to deceive her. "Stop acting, Ethan." Juliet's voice was very soft, her tone chillingly cold. "I won't believe you." No one was going to take Bella from her. "Juliet," Ethan said desperately, "let's meet. Just once, please, you'll believe me. I really, really want to see you. I came to your place today, but you weren't there. But really, I mean no harm, I just miss you." Chapter 19, his words sounded more like a threat to Juliet. The memory of her parents' beatings, her brother's endless leeching, and the sneering faces of those who kicked her when she was down flooded her mind. A coldness seeped into her bones, and she shivered, biting her lip. Perhaps it was a laugh born of extreme anger, but Juliet let out a cold chuckle. From the bedroom, Bella murmured in her sleep. Juliet's defenses went up, and she glared at the phone as if Ethan were right in front of her. "Fine. Let's meet tomorrow. I'd like to see what kind of proof you can come up with." The call with Ethan was cut off abruptly. Juliet then sent him an address. She had chosen a busy street-side restaurant, a place that, given Ethan's standards, he would never set foot in. But the thought of seeing Juliet was enough to make him immediately call his subordinate. "Clear out this place tomorrow." "No, don't clear it out." Juliet had chosen this place precisely because she was worried he would pose a threat. If it was empty, she might not even walk in. The subordinate had never seen President Blackwood so indecisive. He hesitated for a moment and then suggested, "How about we book all the tables and have our people sit around them? That way your date won't be disturbed. The budget is unlimited. Book the entire venue. Make sure they act convincingly." The most ordinary street-side restaurant was filled with an unusual atmosphere. The staff, usually cheerful and chatty, were now quietly busy in the kitchen. When Juliet got out of her car, a valet was already standing by with a welcoming smile, waiting for her keys. "Ma'am, I'll park it for you." "Okay." Although it was a bit strange, Juliet went along with it. Another waiter even rushed over to hold an umbrella for her. The moment she pushed open the restaurant door, the air seemed to freeze. The space, usually filled with quiet chatter, fell silent for a brief moment before returning to normal. It was very strange. Juliet felt a chill run down her spine, but she followed the waiter to her table. She hadn't booked a private room. The thought of being in a confined space with Ethan was not appealing. Juliet didn't even order food. After a simple cup of tea, she opened her phone. The cloud-based security camera was streaming a live feed of her apartment. Luke was on the soft carpet with Bella, building with blocks. Bella was laughing happily. Her expression softened, and her defenses lowered slightly. Just then, a shadow fell over her. Chapter 20. Juliet instinctively shut off her phone. She looked up at the person who had just arrived. As expected, it was Ethan Blackwood. 3 years had passed, but time hadn't changed his appearance at all. Ethan still looked as handsome and composed as ever, though the faint dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept well. But Juliet didn't care. In the past, she had been deceived by Ethan's feigned tenderness, eagerly giving him her heart, only to find out she was just a supporting character in his life. When she was younger, she loved to read. She understood that the fate of every character was decided by the author. Who could escape the invisible hand of fate and achieve true freedom? Juliet didn't believe it. Even she, who knew how the story would unfold, was afraid she couldn't escape. How could Ethan, who was caught in the middle of it all? So her expression remained calm and indifferent. "Long time no see, Ethan Blackwood," Juliet said coolly, getting straight to the point. "Have a seat." Ethan didn't dare to make any sudden moves. Juliet was capable of what she did 3 years ago, and she was just as capable of it now. Forcing her would be useless. Juliet was someone who responded to kindness, not coercion. Ethan knew this well. He pulled out a chair. His hair was still damp from the rain, making him look both devoted and pitiful. "I'm sorry, there was traffic. I'm a little late. Why haven't you ordered yet?" "Looking at your face, I've lost my appetite." Even such a rude comment only made Ethan's expression twist for a moment. He had been on the cover of countless business magazines, and no journalist had ever dared to criticize his appearance. But faced with Juliet's deliberate taunt, Ethan was the one who had to apologize. "Sorry, but you should eat something." "No, thank you," Juliet took a deep breath. "Ethan Blackwood, I'm not here to reminisce with you. I just want to ask, what exactly do you want?" Ethan was silent for a long time, his eyes fixed on Juliet as if he couldn't get enough of her. 3 years. This woman hadn't withered after leaving his care. She looked vibrant, even more assertive than before, yet her eyes were gentle. He didn't know that this was Juliet's transformation after becoming a mother, a gentleness that had nothing to do with him. It only made him fall for her even more. He could almost hear his heart pounding in his ears. Ethan's voice was very low, almost a plea. "I really just love you." Juliet looked at him as if she had just heard the most unbelievable joke, raising an eyebrow slightly. "Ethan Blackwood, you don't have to lie to me. If you think I took so many of your things when I left and you want to hold me accountable now, it's no use. The Blackwood family isn't short on money, is it?" Chapter 21, no. "Then what do you want?" Juliet seemed to have grown tired of this long back and forth. She said bluntly, "Let me guess. Is it because Serafina can't get pregnant, and since I look so much like her, you want me to give you a child that resembles her?" This secret, once buried deep in Ethan's heart, was now exposed. He looked up at Juliet in shock, her scrutinizing gaze piercing him like 1,000 needles. He subconsciously wanted to explain, but Juliet continued, "Ethan Blackwood, I'm a person. I'm not an incubator with a uterus, but no feelings. The day you decided to treat me like that, why weren't you prepared for me to despise you?" Ethan's lips trembled, his mind a blank slate. Even though Juliet's tone was calm, he suddenly understood the depth of the grievance and bitterness she must have felt when she left him 3 years ago. She had seen through his ugly truth long ago, but that had been his initial intention. Over the long years they had spent together, he had fallen in love with this woman who resembled Serafina but had a completely different personality. Serafina would never make him a bowl of soup when he was drunk, give him a sweet kiss in the morning, or tie his tie for him before he left for work, all while being gentle and understanding in front of others. If the ever-successful Ethan Blackwood was a sharp sword, then Juliet was the soft, cotton-lined sheath. A sword is never a good match for another sharp blade, and Serafina was that blade. They were both born into noble families and had received the same elite education. The pride he had, Serafina had as well. Such a woman would never accommodate him for long. Before they tore each other to shreds, he had thought of the gentle Juliet. He missed her. On drunken nights, he would lean against her tombstone and talk to her small photograph. He had fallen in love with her. But why did Juliet know about this? How did she know Serafina couldn't get pregnant? Seeing Ethan's prolonged silence, Juliet finally lost her patience. She stood up with a cold laugh, about to leave, but he subconsciously grabbed her wrist. Without a moment's hesitation, Juliet swung her hand and slapped him across the face. The crisp, loud sound of the slap was a testament to its force. The restaurant fell eerily silent. In her anger, Juliet didn't notice. She looked at the red handprint quickly forming on Ethan's face and said, enunciating each word, "Stay away from me. I don't want to see you." At 29 years old, Ethan had never been slapped before. He stood there, stunned, as Juliet pulled away from him. The sharp clicks of her heels on the floor echoed as she pushed open the door and left without a backward glance. As all the employees watched in shock, Ethan chased after her. Chapter 22, Juliet was fuming. The warmth of Ethan's grip still lingered on her wrist, making her stomach churn. She took the umbrella from the valet, her pace so fast he could barely keep up. "I'll return it tomorrow." After finding her parking spot, she unlocked her car with a vengeance. The moment she started the engine, she heard a frantic knocking on the window. Ethan was drenched, his carefully styled hair completely ruined, looking nothing like his usual self. Juliet, listen to me." Juliet decisively shifted into reverse, not caring that she nearly caused him to fall. In the rearview mirror, she saw Ethan chase after her in the rain for a couple of steps before finally giving up. He was left behind, his figure so lonely it was almost pitiful. It was only after she had calmed down that Juliet realized what she had done. She had actually slapped Ethan Blackwood, but it had felt good. No wonder her parents had been so fond of slapping her. The fire in Juliet's heart had just begun to die down when a cold sneer escaped her lips. She would pay back every bit of the hurt she had suffered, one by one. Today was just the appetizer. Why should she hide and make herself miserable? As long as she protected Bella, she had nothing to fear. With this thought, Juliet felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She drove back to her apartment building. Just then, her phone buzzed with a notification. "Are you back?" It was a message from Luke. Juliet couldn't help but look up and saw a big and a small figure pressed against the floor-to-ceiling window, watching her. They were so cute it made her heart melt. "Yes," Juliet replied with a smile, waving up at them. Bella waved her arms excitedly. It was hard to see clearly, but she was probably calling for her mommy. Luke picked her up and they went back inside. The elevator went up. The moment it stopped at her floor, Bella bounced out of the apartment and hugged her leg excitedly. "Mommy, this morning, Uncle Luke and I read 2 picture books. He told me stories and made me yummy food, but it wasn't very good." Luke came out, scratching his head in embarrassment. "I just did some simple prep. I don't know how it turned out so bad in my hands. I'm so sorry I let Bella go hungry." Juliet couldn't help but laugh. Before she could ask Bella why she had suddenly switched from calling him brother to uncle, she had to comfort him. "It's okay. She seems full of energy, not like she's starving. What did you eat, Bella?" "I had my formula," Bella said, licking her lips, her voice full of grievance. "But I'm still a little hungry." A child her age could basically eat the same food as adults, as long as it wasn't too oily or salty. Juliet hadn't eaten much at the restaurant either, so she turned to Luke, who was about to say goodbye, and smiled. "You haven't eaten either, have you? I'm making dinner for Bella. Would you like to join us?" The words were barely out of her mouth when Luke's eyes lit up. He nodded eagerly and said, "Do we need to buy any groceries? I can go right now." "No need," Juliet said with a smile. "You can play with Bella for a little longer. It won't take long." Chapter 23, Juliet actually quite enjoyed cooking. She had bought a variety of pots and pans. The feeling of happiness she got from watching her favorite ingredients bubbling in the soup, the steam and aroma filling the air, was indescribable. But most of the time, she and Bella couldn't eat that much, and many of the beautiful dishes she had bought were left unused. So, watching Luke gulp down his soup and then head to the kitchen for more rice, she couldn't help but smile. Bella's eyes widened. She chewed on her rubber spoon and said loudly, "Uncle, how can you eat so much? You eat even more than Bella." Luke froze. A faint blush appeared on his face. He said awkwardly, "I'm sorry, Juliet. I haven't had a home-cooked meal like this in a long time. It's really delicious." Bella waved her hand understandingly. "It's okay. My mommy likes people who can eat a lot." "That's right," Juliet said with a smile. "Bella can eat, but her tummy is still small. If you help me finish the leftovers, I can go buy fresh ingredients. But you live alone and don't know how to cook. Do you usually eat takeout?" "Yes," Luke said pitifully. "I eat takeout every day. At most, I'll cook some noodles myself. I'm tired of all the restaurants around here. I usually have to go far to find something to eat." Juliet pursed her lips. Her rational mind told her that she shouldn't easily consider a man her age a friend or companion, but Luke seemed so sincere and friendly. Compared to her brother, who was around the same age, Juliet was more willing to have Luke over often. She hesitated for a moment and then said softly, "If you don't mind, you can come for lunch." "I don't mind," Luke said quickly. He grinned, revealing a bright smile. "Then I'll buy the groceries on my way to work every day as my contribution. You can tell me what to buy the day before, Juliet." Juliet wasn't short on money, but she knew Luke would feel uncomfortable eating for free, so she agreed. Bella's curious eyes darted between the two of them. She had finished eating long ago, but the novelty of having this new uncle at home made her reluctant to leave the table. Although she didn't fully understand their conversation, Bella gathered that she might be seeing this uncle frequently during lunchtime in the future. She happily hopped off her chair, bent down, and rummaged through the bottom of the fridge for her beloved cheese sticks, which she then handed to Luke. "Uncle, this is for you." Chapter 24. After washing the dishes, Luke left with many thanks. That night, while giving Bella a bath, Juliet remembered her earlier question and asked softly, "Sweetie, why did you suddenly start calling him Uncle Luke instead of the young man?" Bella tilted her head and thought for a long time. "Because Uncle Luke said that he calls you sis, and I call you mommy, so I have to call him uncle, not young man." Although she didn't know why Luke was so particular about this form of address, Juliet was relieved. She didn't know what her small decision would bring in the future, but at this moment, she believed Luke was a trustworthy friend. That was enough. Juliet hadn't been working much lately. She and Bella would sleep in until the sun was high in the sky. It wasn't until Luke, who had already bought groceries, knocked on the door that she reluctantly got out of bed. Looking at the young man's cheerful smile, Juliet was a little curious. "What do you do for work? It seems like you only work half a day." Luke paused for a moment and then smiled. "I'm a freelancer. I'm just listed as an employee at a friend's company. I work on my side hustle at home in the afternoons." Juliet didn't press further. She wasn't used to prying into other people's lives. Bella had been sitting at the dining table for a while, waiting. During their cheerful meal, Luke seemed to want to say something several times but held back. "What's wrong?" Juliet noticed and asked him directly. Luke hesitated for a moment and then said, "Juliet, I don't know if I should tell you this. There's a G-Wagon parked at the entrance of our complex. It was there when I left this morning, and it was still there when I came back." An image of a car instantly appeared in her mind, and her pupils constricted. "A black one, with a license plate ending in X720-something, right?" "It is black, but I didn't see the license plate clearly. I don't think it started with 720. The reason Juliet remembered Ethan's license plate so clearly was because when they were together, or rather, when Ethan was keeping her, she had once asked about the meaning of those 3 numbers. But Ethan had only looked at her with his deep, cold eyes and said casually that it was just a random number. She had kissed and made love with Ethan in that car, in the throes of passion. It wasn't until Serafina appeared that Juliet learned that the number was her birthday. How utterly humiliating. She felt foolish for her secret excitement back then. But what mattered more now was whether that car belonged to the relentless Ethan. After a moment of hesitation, she asked Luke to watch Bella for a while and went to the complex entrance by herself. For the past 2 days, her phone had been flooded with messages from Ethan. She had blocked him, but he kept texting her from different numbers. Chapter 25, standing in the security booth and looking from a distance, Juliet couldn't make out who was in the driver's seat. But the security guard spoke up. "Miss Monroe, do you know that person?" Juliet was taken aback. He continued to complain. "He's been trying to get in several times, but he doesn't have a key card. I asked him what he wanted, and he said he wanted to see you. Isn't that strange? I told him to give you a call, but he couldn't get through. So, he's been parked at the entrance all morning. I told him non-residents have to pay $20 an hour to park here, and he just paid for the next 15 hours. The security guard's description could only fit Ethan. Juliet was speechless. She could only say to the guard, "It's fine, let him pay, just don't let him in, I don't know him well." "You got it, no problem." Living in a gated community at least provided some peace of mind. Juliet was about to head back when Ethan spotted her. He had been cooped up in the car all morning on a hot day. Even with the air conditioning on, there were beads of sweat on his brow. Juliet ignored him and walked faster, but he raised his voice and called out her name. "Juliet, Juliet." Embarrassed, Juliet stopped and turned back, looking at him coldly through the gate. "Mr. Blackwood, what is it that you want?" Ethan looked at her, his eyes dark. It took him a long moment to say, "Juliet, can you tell me who Bella Monroe is?" Hearing Bella's full name from his lips so suddenly, Juliet's pupils constricted, but she quickly composed herself. Her expression was cold. "What does that have to do with you, Ethan Blackwood? Are you investigating me?" Her counter-attack caught Ethan off guard. He quickly shook his head and said softly, "No, Juliet, that's not what I meant. Bella Monroe, 2 years old, a girl. Is she our child?" The timing and age matched up. Ethan's gaze was scorching, almost burning Juliet. Her guard went up to its highest level. She said coldly, "She has nothing to do with you, Ethan Blackwood. If you show up in front of me again, I'll call the police. Don't bother us." Whenever her daughter was mentioned, Juliet's heart pounded. She was terrified of repeating the events of her dream. Her expression was stern, her voice high. But Ethan didn't give up. He gripped the bars of the gate and said earnestly, "Juliet, let me see her, please. Whether she's my daughter or not, as long as she's your child, that's enough. Let's take care of her together, okay?" Juliet wanted nothing to do with him. She rejected him without hesitation and quickly walked back home. In the elevator, she realized she was covered in a cold sweat. Bella was drowsy after her meal, and Luke was holding her, rocking her to sleep. Seeing Juliet's disheveled state, he looked surprised. Chapter 26, Juliet was too exhausted to explain. She sat down on the sofa and took a long time to catch her breath. After Bella had fallen asleep, Luke poured her a glass of water and sat down on the sofa, his eyes full of concern. Was it that man, Bella's biological father? Yes. The blood connection between Bella and Ethan was what Juliet detested most. She covered her head in her hands, a headache throbbing. Then she suddenly realized she had another solution. "Luke," Juliet bit her lip. "I want to ask you for a favor." Luke nodded. "Just tell me what it is. If I can help, I will." I want you to pretend to be Bella's father." The words were embarrassing to say, but Juliet had no other choice. "We can be a couple who's having a fight. Is that okay? You went to get your PhD before Bella was born, and I've been raising her alone. Now you're back and want to take care of us." For a man with no romantic ties to her, this was a difficult role to accept, but Luke quickly smiled and agreed without hesitation. "No problem," the young man gave a clumsy salute, his smile bright and cheerful. "I guarantee I'll play my part well, Juliet. No matter what happens, I'm willing to help you." His form of address had changed from sis to a more intimate nickname. Juliet found it a bit strange, but she assumed he was just trying to get into character. She gave him a grateful smile. It was only a matter of time before Ethan found out about Bella. She couldn't hide her forever. Now that she was 2, she could stay at home all day. But what about when she was 3, 4? What about preschool, elementary school? The best solution was to make Ethan give up. If Bella's biological father wasn't him, there would be no reason for him to take her. "Juliet, have you submitted your latest manuscript?" The text message reminded Juliet that she had been so busy with all this chaos that she had forgotten to send her work to her editor. She had been making a steady income from writing children's picture books, and there was no reason to turn down this extra work. She quickly replied with an apology, "Not yet. Can we set a time for me to drop it off?" Of course, looking forward to it, after making Luke a big meal as a thank you, Juliet took her manuscript to her editor's office. They chatted for a while. "Juliet, I really hope you can become a long-term contributor. Your illustrations are amazing." "I'll try my best. I've been a bit busy lately." "No problem, we'll be waiting." When Juliet returned home, the security guard said with a grin, "Miss Monroe, you're back. You have a visitor today, chapter 27. "What visitor?" Juliet was taken aback. Only Bella and Luke were at home. Who would come looking for her at this time? Could it be Ethan? Her heart tightened. She quickly took Ethan's number off her block list and called him. "Are you at my house?" Her first words were full of anger. Ethan hadn't even had a chance to be happy before he frowned in confusion. The security guard scratched his head and explained, "I think it's your family. They couldn't reach you by phone either, but they showed me a family photo of all of you." "Hey, Miss Monroe. This is bad. This was even worse than Ethan showing up at her house." Juliet only needed to hear a few words from the security guard to realize that her blood-sucking parents had arrived. She didn't have time to explain. Ethan was still asking what was going on the other end of the line, but Juliet quickly hung up and ran. She was out of breath by the time she reached her floor. When the elevator stopped, her heart stopped with it. The door to her apartment was ajar. A body was lying on the floor. Luke was unconscious, a bloody gash on his forehead from being hit with something. Juliet screamed. She didn't hesitate. She knelt down, pressed a clean handkerchief to Luke's forehead, and quickly dialed for an ambulance. It was then that she realized how eerily quiet the apartment was. There wasn't even the sound of crying. Bella was gone. The place was a mess, as if it had been ransacked. For a moment, Juliet's mind went blank. It wasn't until the sound of the ambulance siren reached her from downstairs that Luke managed to open his eyes. He grabbed Juliet's hand, his eyes red and trembling. I'm sorry, Juliet. They took Bella." Juliet's legs gave out, and she almost collapsed. She knew Luke was also a victim. She forced herself to stay upright and spoke to the paramedics as calmly as she could. "Ma'am, I suggest you call the police immediately," the nurse said with a serious expression as they lifted Luke onto the stretcher. Juliet managed to maintain her composure. Just as she was about to take out her phone to dial the emergency number, she received a text message. "Tell Ethan Blackwood to give you another $5 million, or I'll kill his daughter." Attached was a photo of Bella, forced to sit on a stool, crying her eyes out. Juliet's heart felt like it was being torn apart. She knew who was capable of such a shameless act, and because of that, she felt even more pain. Her toxic family of origin wasn't content with just sucking her dry. Now they were targeting Bella, but right now, she had no choice but to contact Ethan. She took a deep breath and called her brother. The call was answered quickly. In the background, she could even hear Bella crying for her mommy. Where's the money? Is it ready? Chapter 28, her brother's attitude was as flippant as ever, laughing as he used his niece to extort a large sum of money from his sister. Juliet fought back the nausea and said sharply, "You better not hurt her." "All right, sis. I thought she was just some little good-for-nothing you had with some random guy, but it turns out she's Ethan Blackwood's kid." His tone suddenly turned cold. "At least she's useful for something. Otherwise, she'd be just like you, a waste." "Leo, don't waste your breath on that useless woman. It's bad luck." Leo Monroe, that was her brother's name. If the old Juliet had known that her brother and parents were conspiring against her, she would have been heartbroken, even devastated by their coldness. But now, she understood that her only family was the daughter she had given birth to. The others didn't count. This brother of hers, Leo Monroe, had been brainwashed by their parents since childhood with the idea that boys were the only ones who mattered. He had now become a delinquent, yet their parents still doted on him. They even leeched off her to fund his gambling habit. Hearing her mother's voice, Juliet felt a strange sense of calm. How can you be so sure she's Ethan Blackwood's child? What if he doesn't give her a single penny? Then we'll sell her. Her brother's tone was light. "Sis, you don't know, do you? There are plenty of men in the villages now looking for child brides for their sons. We could probably get 4,000 or 5,000 for her. Whether she survives after that is another story. You've raised this little good-for-nothing so well, must have cost you a lot, right? Are you willing to part with her, sis?" Juliet took a deep breath to calm herself and said seriously, "Fine, I'll get the money from Ethan Blackwood. If you touch a single hair on her head, I will never forgive you, and you won't get a cent." All right, sis, I'm ready when you are." After hanging up, Juliet realized Ethan had already called her several times. She gritted her teeth and, with no other choice, called him back. She got straight to the point, "Get $5 million for me. Bella Monroe has been kidnapped." Ethan was shocked. He didn't say another word. "Okay. Send me your account number and your address. I'm on my way, don't panic." She couldn't handle this alone, especially since her family was after Ethan's money. Juliet didn't hesitate. She immediately sent him her address and account number. Ethan first transferred $1 million to her account and sent her a message. "Don't be reckless. I'm almost there. If you pay them all at once, they might get greedier, and then the child's safety won't be guaranteed." Chapter 29, worry had clouded her judgment. If Ethan hadn't reminded her, Juliet would have never thought of that. She gritted her teeth and transferred $500,000 to her brother's designated account. He immediately sent a message back. "Where's the rest of the money? Let me see the child first, otherwise you won't get another cent. I have $4.5 million left. I'll transfer another $1 million after I see her on video. The rest, I want to exchange in person. The child for the money." Ethan arrived at the hospital in just 5 minutes. There was still dust on his knees and elbows, and sweat beaded on his forehead. He looked disheveled but also reliable. "Fine, the location is the docks. If you call the police, I'll throw her into the sea on the spot." They were truly depraved. A bitter taste filled Juliet's mouth. Ethan said softly, "Don't be scared. We'll go together. Do you remember what you said back then, about how I must have pushed my parents to that point?" Juliet smiled, a bitter, painful smile. "Well, Ethan Blackwood, what do you think now? Did I push them?" The words he had spoken back then were like spilled water, leaving a permanent stain on Juliet's heart. Ethan lowered his head and, after a long moment, slapped himself hard across the face. His hair was disheveled, his voice so hoarse it was barely audible. "I'm sorry, Juliet. I was wrong." Leo sent a video of Bella sleeping on a bed, as promised. There were no visible injuries on her, but she was clearly frightened. Tears still clung to her eyelashes, and she was sleeping fitfully. "See, I've taken good care of her. Now send the money." This time, Ethan transferred $4.5 million to Juliet. She sent $1 million to her brother's account and then looked at Ethan, speechless. "You're not going to ask anything?" The red handprint was still visible on Ethan's face. He said softly, "I told you, Juliet. Whether she's my child or not, as long as she's yours, I will take care of her." If the situation weren't so critical, Juliet might have thought more about the meaning behind his words. But right now, she couldn't afford to. She only looked at Ethan with a complicated expression. "I'll find a way to pay you back." She would get Bella back, and she wouldn't let those scoundrels get the money. There were still 2 hours until the arranged time. Juliet picked up a sharp kitchen knife and put it in her bag. Just then, her phone rang. It was a frantic Luke on the other end. "Juliet, I'm so sorry. I was playing with Bella when someone came to the door saying they were your relatives. They even showed me a family photo. I was so careless. I can't believe I let them take Bella." His voice was full of remorse. In fact, Juliet felt guilty too. This was her family's mess, and Luke had been caught in the crossfire. Chapter 30, It's okay. "I'll handle it. Is your head any better? It's not your fault. I'll get Bella back." "I'm fine." Luke sounded extremely dejected. "I'm sorry I can't help you right now, Juliet. I'm really sorry." Even though he was the one who was injured. Juliet's voice softened even more. She had seen the security footage. If it hadn't been her parents and Leo ganging up on him to take one child, Luke had done his best to protect Bella. That was why his forehead had been gashed open. Ethan's expression soured, but he held back from adding to Juliet's troubles. He was intensely jealous of the man named Luke on the phone, who was receiving Juliet's gentle comfort. That used to be reserved for him alone. As the sky darkened and the time drew near, Juliet went downstairs to her car, telling Ethan to sit in the back. She had agreed on the phone to go alone. She didn't know if Ethan's presence would provoke them, so she had to be extremely careful not to put Bella in more danger. The wind howled at the deserted docks. With a single glance, Juliet understood why they had chosen this location. She didn't let Ethan get out of the car. Ethan's expression tightened. He said softly, "Juliet, this isn't safe and don't use the knife on them. If money can solve the problem, just use money, okay?" Juliet glanced at him and actually smiled. "Ethan Blackwood, sometimes I really don't know if you're this naive because you grew up in an ivory tower. People like my parents can never be satisfied with money. Yes, you can easily give them $5 million. What about $50 million or $500 million? If you dare to give it, they'll dare to take it. People from our background are like rats. Once we get a taste of blood, we want to suck the marrow from the bones, especially since you're the one who fed their appetite in the first place." His words left Ethan speechless. Back when Juliet was still with him, it was indeed he who had enabled her parents' parasitic habits. He had foolishly thought that the more money her family got, the more devoted Juliet would be to him. But in the end, he had to taste the bitter fruit of his own making. Juliet slammed the car door shut. She had a kitchen knife tucked into the back of her waistband and walked calmly to the side of the road to wait. To her surprise, only Leo Monroe sauntered over. "Where's Bella?" Juliet's expression hardened, her voice sharp. "If you don't bring her here, you're not getting any money. Don't be in such a hurry, sis," Leo said with a grin. "We even went to your funeral 3 years ago. Why are you being so cold now? I never thought you were still alive. I'm so happy." "Happy?" Juliet sneered. "Because I can be your blood bank again, is that why you're happy? Why do you have to put it so harshly? Isn't it natural for a sister to help her brother?" Chapter 31, the words made Juliet feel sick. She looked at Leo's erratic behavior and suddenly understood. Her eyes widened in disbelief. "Are you on drugs?" That explained why her family suddenly needed such a large sum of money. A drug addict would do anything to get their fix. Leo laughed for a while, then looked at her with a dazed expression. "You really get me, sis. So, where's the money? Give me the money. Bring Bella out. I'm not giving you any money until I see her." Leo clicked his tongue and shouted behind him, "Mom, bring that little brat over here." A drug addict was much more dangerous than someone just after money. Juliet's heart was in her throat. Fortunately, Bella appeared to be unharmed, just being dragged over reluctantly by her mother. "Mommy," Bella's eyes lit up, and she was about to run towards her when Leo grabbed her. He said with a grin, "Come on, let your uncle hold you for a bit. You little good-for-nothing, you're so pretty just like your mother." Juliet was furious. She said coldly, "Leo Monroe, let Bella come over here. For every step she takes, I'll transfer you $1 million. The rest will be sent once she's with me. I advise you not to do anything reckless. If you don't get this money, you can forget about getting your fix." "Fine, fine." Leo rubbed his neck impatiently and put Bella down. His mother was about to say something, but he pulled her back. He gestured with his chin for Bella to walk towards them. "Little good for nothing, let's play a game." He brandished a knife. "You can only take one step at a time, you hear me? One extra step and I'll stab you." Bella looked at Juliet, confused. Juliet was terrified, her voice shrill. Bella, listen to him, okay? Bella nodded obediently, but Leo laughed again, his eyes measuring the distance between them. Sis, in that case, isn't the money a bit short? Of course. Juliet's heart sank. She had anticipated that Leo would demand more money. If the initial price was just to test Bella's importance to Ethan, then he had now gotten the answer he wanted. Stop beating around the bush, Juliet took a deep breath. Name your price. Leo Monroe, don't be greedy, this child isn't Ethan Blackwood's biological daughter. If you keep this up, he won't pay. Haha, you're so direct, sis. I'm your brother, of course I won't ask for too much. 10 million, not including what we agreed on before. Otherwise. Chapter 32. Bella's face scrunched up as Leo held her in front of him, and she squirmed unhappily. You're a bad guy, let me go. Fine, Juliet said, her heart pounding as she saw the blade at Bella's neck. She took a deep breath and spoke gently. Bella, be a good girl. Walk towards mommy, one step at a time, okay? Her senses were on high alert. She could hear every rustle of the wind. Behind her, she heard a car door open softly. It was Ethan, but she couldn't turn around. She crouched down and opened her arms to Bella. Everything changed in an instant. She was, after all, only a 2-year-old child. The moment Leo let go, Bella took off running towards Juliet. Her heart leaped into her throat. She ran towards her as fast as she could, but Bella was no match for the gleaming knife in Leo's hand. Just as the blade was about to cut the small child, a figure lunged forward, knocking Leo off balance. Bella, like a baby bird returning to its nest, Bella burst into tears the moment she was in Juliet's arms. Juliet didn't have time to check her for injuries. She looked at Ethan, who was now wrestling with Leo, and her parents, who were about to rush in. She shouted, "Run to the car, lock the doors, don't open them for anyone, Bella, run." There was still a long distance between them, and Juliet was blocking the way. Bella nodded through her tears and ran towards the car. "Juliet, get in the car with her, the door is open," Ethan roared. But after seeing Bella safely in the car, Juliet pulled the kitchen knife from her back and ran towards them. It was dark. It wasn't until she was close to Ethan that Juliet saw the long gash on his arm. The skin was split open, and blood was streaming down his tensed, veiny arm. Before she could react, Leo, his eyes glinting with malice, plunged the knife downwards, stabbing Ethan between the ribs. Ethan's pupils dilated. The intense pain drained him of his strength. He could no longer stop Leo from pushing the knife in deeper. He coughed up a mouthful of blood. David and Helen Monroe had intended to help hold Ethan down, but they never expected things to escalate to this point. They were horrified and rushed forward to try and stop Leo. "Don't kill him, don't kill him. Get off me." Unlike her foolish parents, Juliet knew that Leo was now in a frenzy. She used all her strength to push her mother away and kicked Leo hard in the side of the head. Leo tried to get up, but Juliet brought the kitchen knife down hard on his hand. Chapter 33. This hand that had hurt Ethan, done drugs, kidnapped Bella, and knocked out Luke. This hand that had once slapped her blood splattered on her face. The sound of ambulances and police sirens filled the air. Juliet looked at the now unconscious Leo and his severed fingers, her expression cold. My son." Helen Monroe's eyes rolled back and she almost fainted. David Monroe was furious, his finger pointing at Juliet, trembling, but he was speechless. In the flashing red and blue lights, Juliet's face was grim. Blood trickled down her beautiful cheeks. She still held the bloody kitchen knife, and she stomped on the severed fingers on the ground. Her high-quality combat boots ground the fingers into the dirt. She sneered. "He doesn't deserve this hand. It's better off gone." "Bella was a big help this time," Luke said with a smile, looking much better. "She answered the phone and gave me your location, so I called the police right away." Bella was lying next to him, looking at a picture book. She had been unharmed throughout the entire ordeal, and being so young, seemed unaffected by it now. Juliet sighed with relief and stroked her hair. Luke still looked sad. "I wasn't much help this time. I even put Bella in danger." It's okay," Juliet shook her head. "It's not your fault, I should be the one apologizing." Thankfully, Luke was not seriously injured. Otherwise, Juliet would have been consumed with guilt. "What about him? How is he now?" Luke asked cautiously, but he still saw the shadow that passed over Juliet's eyes. She forced a smile. "He just got out of danger. He should be fine." This entire floor was now occupied by the Blackwood family. Juliet certainly wouldn't be going up there at a time like this. The police had already taken her parents away, but Leo, due to excessive blood loss, was currently receiving treatment at the hospital. With charges of extortion, drug use, and kidnapping, he would likely spend the rest of his life in prison. Luke talked with Juliet for a while. He was getting tired, so Juliet took Bella and left the room, gently closing his door. "Miss Monroe, hello," a man in a suit said, his tone steady and very gentle. "I'm the Blackwood family's lawyer and also a friend of Mr. Blackwood." Seeing Juliet's nervous expression, he explained, "Don't worry, your brother. Or rather, the suspect, Mr. Leo Monroe, his crimes can all be proven with your message records. His conviction is a certainty. The police have already taken a blood sample for a drug test. They are taking this case very seriously, so we should have a result soon. I'm just here to inform you that your act of self-defense may be considered excessive, but please don't worry. The Blackwood family will defend you. There will be no problems." Chapter 34. Leo Monroe's fingers had been so badly crushed by Juliet that they couldn't be reattached. Combined with the swift and professional legal action taken by the Blackwood family, he would be imprisoned for at least 40 to 50 years. This was the only piece of good news Juliet had heard all day. She let out a sigh of relief. "How is Ethan Blackwood now?" "It's not looking good," the lawyer frowned, looking helpless. "Mr. Blackwood had an old injury, and the wound on his arm has reopened. That knife wound from Leo Monroe pierced his lung. Although he's out of danger now, he was just moved from the ICU to a regular ward. I can't give you a definite answer." Juliet's heart clenched again. "Miss Monroe," he said sincerely, "I hope you will go see him. Is that the doctor's suggestion?" "No, it's my advice as a friend." Juliet then heard about an Ethan she had never known. "Miss Monroe, we all know about the faked death 3 years ago, but no one blames you. In fact, we're relieved. Without you, Ethan Blackwood is like a perfect empty shell. For 3 years, Ethan had managed his work with the same efficiency as always. He never showed his pain to anyone. So, when Juliet Monroe's body was pulled from the fire and her death was confirmed, Ethan locked himself in his room for a whole week. He didn't eat or drink. He didn't even make a sound. As his close friend, the lawyer had even considered breaking down the door to see if he was still alive. But Ethan had only leaned against the door and said in a weak, tired voice, "Just let me be for a while." That while lasted for 3 years. When he finally emerged, Ethan seemed to have pulled himself together. But the first thing he did was break off his engagement with Serafina. The second was to announce that he would never marry. The Blackwood elders thought he had gone mad. They couldn't understand his actions, and no one would ever believe that Ethan's behavior was because of the ridiculously deceased Juliet Monroe. Only he knew that on every drunken night, every rainy night, every snowy night, Ethan would go to that fake grave and sit there. For 3 whole years. "If you are willing, the Blackwood family is prepared to give you full visitation rights," he said earnestly. "Perhaps your voice can wake him up." But Juliet just looked down, her expression lost. Let me think about it." Why, after the disposable supporting female character left, did the male lead not live happily ever after with the female lead? Was the ending of the story so easy to change? Juliet didn't believe it, but the facts were right in front of her, like a sharp knife, cutting through the fog that had been clouding her vision. Chapter 35. The lawyer's disappointment was evident, but he still nodded in understanding. He said politely, "Miss Monroe, please call me anytime if you need anything." Bella had been silent all this time. His gaze shifted downwards and flickered for a moment. "Is this Ethan Blackwood's child?" Juliet still couldn't fully trust the Blackwood family. She picked up Bella and smiled, her mind in a jumble. "No, Bella's father. Is not Ethan Blackwood. Hello, I think I'll go see him after all." Regardless, Ethan had been seriously injured trying to save Bella. The lawyer's eyes immediately lit up, and he nodded repeatedly with a smile. "Of course, Miss Monroe, please follow me." Ethan's private room was at the end of the hall. A few people were sitting outside the door. When they saw Juliet approaching, they all stood up. "Isn't that the woman who slapped President Blackwood in the restaurant? It really is Miss Monroe. She's so beautiful." "Yes, President Blackwood has her picture on his desk." Juliet felt a little uncomfortable. Bella blinked and buried her face in her mother's neck, whispering, "Mommy, aren't you sleepy? It's time for bed." "What about you, sweetie?" "I already had a nap, so I'm not too tired. I'm worried about Mommy." The room was silent. Juliet looked at Ethan's pale face, her feelings a complicated mess. She didn't know how to face the man in front of her, whether she should let him know that Bella was his child. Could she really take that gamble again? But the scene from her dream was a recurring nightmare that had haunted her for the past 3 years. The fact was, she had been doing just fine without Ethan. She couldn't bring herself to break out of the comfort zone she had built for herself. She didn't want to take another step forward. Lost in thought, Juliet began to feel drowsy and closed her eyes, leaning against the bed. When she woke up again, she had been moved to the bed next to Ethan's. She could hear Bella's happy laughter and a man's gentle voice. "My daddy smiles a lot. He always calls me his treasure. He's very tall, and Mommy always smiles when she sees him. She also makes lots of yummy food for Daddy." "Then where is he now?" "At home. Uncle, do you have a treasure? Where is your treasure?" Ethan paused for a moment and then chuckled softly, a hint of loneliness and desolation. "I lost my treasure. Now, I don't know if she's willing to come back." Juliet lay with her eyes closed, a mix of emotions swirling within her. She waited until the topic had passed, and Bella was trying to climb onto Ethan's bed before she opened her eyes, pretending to have just woken up. The moment she moved, Ethan's gaze shifted to her, and their eyes met. Just like all those years ago, on every morning and night they had spent together. But the smell of disinfectant filled the air, and Bella's laughter broke the spell. Juliet quickly got out of bed and picked Bella up. "Sweetie, you can't do that. You'll press on the uncle's IV tube, and it will hurt." Bella made a face and said sweetly, "Uncle said it's okay, Mommy. You slept for a long time." "Are you tired?" "Not really tired, just sleepy." Chapter 36. After settling Bella down, Juliet looked up at Ethan. He had been quietly watching the mother and daughter for a long time. She said uncomfortably, "You're awake." "Has the doctor seen you?" "He has." "I'm fine." Ethan didn't even want to blink, taking a long moment to say, "Bella must be hungry. You should take her to get something to eat." "Okay." With Ethan awake, the visitation rules in the ward were relaxed. As Juliet was leaving, she saw a familiar face. It was Serafina Vance. Her beautiful eyes were filled with tears. Over the past 3 years, she had only grown more beautiful, like a proud and stunning rose. "Why did you come back after you died?" Her voice was soft, her tone gentle, but her words were sharp. "Juliet Monroe, why did you have to appear in our lives? You're like a ghost that won't go away." "Miss Vance," Juliet stopped and looked at her coldly. "I have no relationship with Ethan Blackwood now. If you love him, then go after him. What does that have to do with me?" Serafina was stunned for a moment and was about to say something else, but Juliet had already swept past her like the wind, holding Bella, and left. That child, a cold, resentful glint flashed in her eyes. It was laughable. She was jealous of Juliet to an unbearable degree. Serafina had known for many years that she couldn't have a child with Ethan. That was why their wedding had been postponed again and again, and why they had eventually broken up. But Ethan had held her and told her that he would find a way to make it work for both of them. But why? Why did Juliet get Ethan's love, a lovely child, and now such a happy life? Was she any less than Juliet in any way? Serafina couldn't understand. Her eyes turned red. Her beautiful, sharp nails dug into her flesh as she gritted her teeth and glared at the woman's retreating back. Her mother gently patted her on the shoulder and said soothingly, "It's all right, Serafina. Let's go in." Even though they knew Ethan wasn't willing to see anyone right now, they didn't want to miss this opportunity to strengthen their ties. Serafina dabbed her tears with a tissue, took a deep breath, and put on a smile before pushing open the hospital room door. The joy on the man's face faded the moment he saw her. He looked away and said softly, "You're here." "Who were you expecting?" Serafina said, as if joking. She placed the soup she had brought on the table and smiled. "What's wrong? Aren't you happy to see me?" "No." "Ethan," Serafina took his cold, IV drip-chilled hand. "You were in so much danger this time, you know that. The Blackwood family can't lose you." Chapter 37. Ethan frowned and subtly pulled his hand away, his expression growing colder. Serafina, however, turned to the table, picked up the thermos, and said softly, "Don't you love homemade soup the most? I made you some today." "Serafina," Ethan turned his face to look at her and said without hesitation, "Do you really think I don't love you because you can't cook? Besides, we've known each other for so many years, I know whether you made this soup or not. Don't waste your time on these useless things. I'm sorry for what happened." But Serafina, we can be like brother and sister or friends. Serafina's lips trembled and tears streamed down her face. She had never cried like this before. A woman who had grown up in a privileged environment was naturally proud and spoiled. A voice in her head was telling her that this wasn't how it was supposed to be, this wasn't the ending. If it weren't for Juliet, Ethan wouldn't have found fault with her. He wouldn't have fallen in love with that worthless, poor, inferior woman. But the truth was, she couldn't have his love. There was nothing she could do. Ethan, Serafina sobbed, an apology is useless. Juliet doesn't love you and you don't love me. None of us can get what we want. This is our karma. Juliet helped Luke with his discharge procedures and drove them both home. Bella was climbing all over the car seat. Even though she had just been through something so terrifying a few days ago, she seemed completely unaffected. Juliet, has your brother been sentenced yet? I don't know, Juliet said, looking at the red light in the distance. Her phone had been ringing off the hook with calls from her biological parents. She rubbed her forehead tiredly. Ethan Blackwood is handling it. But I've been meaning to ask you, you're 2 years older than me, so it's normal for me to call you sis. But why did you change the way you address me? Luke was taken aback by the question. He was stunned for a few seconds. It wasn't until the car started moving again that he turned his head and coughed dryly. From Juliet's perspective, all she could see was his flushed ear and cheek. Her heart skipped a beat. She seemed to understand something, and awkwardly closed her mouth. Luke pursed his lips. After a long moment, as if he had made up his mind, he stammered, Juliet, I have something to do when I get back today. Can I take you out to dinner next Sunday? Bella. You can bring Bella, Luke said quickly. Don't feel pressured. We've known each other for a long time, and you've always been the one cooking for me. I've checked out all the restaurants around here. I know which ones are good and which ones are suitable for kids. Give me a chance, Juliet. Chapter 38, he had put it so plainly that refusing would have seemed too unkind. Juliet had no choice but to nod in agreement. As expected, as soon as they got home, Luke smiled, went back to his own apartment, and even bent down to kiss the back of Bella's hand, saying cheerfully, See you next week. Before, Juliet had never thought of Luke in a romantic way. She had only seen him as a polite younger brother. But she wasn't some naive young girl. She quickly understood his intentions and sighed in frustration. What should I do, Bella? She whispered, kissing her daughter's soft cheek. Why does everyone want to be your daddy? Do you want a daddy? No, Bella pouted. Mommy is enough. Mommy makes me food, reads me picture books, and loves me. Her sweet words melted Juliet's heart. But then she remembered the events of the past few days, and her expression darkened. But what if Mommy isn't strong enough to protect you? When I grow up, I'll protect Mommy, Juliet laughed at herself. Even a little child like Bella understood this simple truth, yet she was constantly agonizing over it. If it wasn't for love, why rush into another marriage? She took a deep breath and smiled. Thank you, Bella, you're such a smart baby. How about an extra cheese stick today? If I say I love you more, can I have more? No, you little rascal. As the date approached, Juliet decided to enroll Bella in a highly professional and strict daycare for the day. After thoroughly checking the security and teachers and confirming it was 100% safe, she went to meet Luke. He had chosen a very cozy restaurant. It was high-end but not overly extravagant, seeming perfect for a family of 3. Why didn't you bring Bella? Luke looked very handsome today. The bandage on his forehead didn't detract from his good looks and cheerful demeanor, it actually added a touch of boyish charm. I really wanted to see her. Juliet smiled. I let her go play with other kids. Bella will be starting preschool next year, so it's good for her to get more exposure to the outside world. Luke nodded. Melodious music filled the restaurant. Luke looked a little uncomfortable, but tried his best to maintain his composure. Juliet knew he had something to say, so she put down her chopsticks. Juliet, Luke said softly, I know in your eyes I'm young, naive, and unreliable, but I really want to. No, Juliet interrupted him, her tone serious. Luke, I never thought of those as your flaws. You're young, mature, and sensible. You have a cheerful personality and a great love for children, don't you? You've helped me so much since we met. Yes, but Juliet, can someone like me pursue you? Luke gathered his courage and said seriously, I really want to be with you. Or rather, from the moment I passed by this complex and saw you, I liked you. And when I found out I was living next door to you and could help you, I was so happy. Chapter 39, I really like you, Juliet. I like you and I like Bella. I won't ask Bella to call me daddy or anything else. And I won't force you to have my child. If you want, we can just have Bella as our daughter. Please give me a chance. Let me protect you both, okay? Such a sincere confession was very moving. Juliet's eyelashes fluttered, and she looked down at the dishes in front of her. Every one of them was something she liked, a carefully selected menu. She had never told Luke what she liked to eat. He had observed it all himself. I'm sorry, Juliet replied just as seriously. I'm sorry, Luke. It's because I like you so much that I don't want to hurt you. I only see you as a friend, a brother. I don't love you, and that wouldn't be fair to you. That was Juliet's personality, direct and to the point, never dragging things out. The light in Luke's eyes dimmed, and the smile on his lips faded. He gave a bitter laugh. Okay. I'm sorry, Juliet. Can we still be friends? Of course. You're a big brother that Bella really likes and a friend that I really like. You're welcome to come over for dinner anytime, okay? After they parted ways at the restaurant, the wind outside blew the fallen leaves along the street. Autumn had arrived. Juliet rushed to pick up Bella. She was listening to the teacher talk about Bella's day, a smile on her face, when she saw a man crouching in front of her daughter. Uncle, my mommy is here to pick me up. Bella waved at Ethan Blackwood and ran over to hug Juliet's leg. Juliet bent down to pick her up and looked at Ethan, surprised. What are you doing here? I was picking up my nephew and saw Bella, so I chatted with her for a bit. Ethan's face was no longer so pale. His injuries hadn't been that serious, just in an unfortunate location. Don't worry, this daycare is very strict. Non-parents can't get in. Juliet nodded. She turned to leave, but Ethan took a couple of steps after her. In the long hallway, they looked at each other. Ethan's lips trembled, but he managed a smile. What are your plans for the future? I'll probably take Bella on a road trip. She's starting preschool soon, so she won't have as many opportunities to play. This was indeed Juliet's plan, not just an excuse to dismiss Ethan. Bella only understood the play part and clapped her hands with a wow, smiling brightly. Mommy, I'll be a good girl. I know, you little charmer. Ethan looked at the radiant, gentle Juliet, and his eyes welled up. He didn't need to say anything more. He already knew her choice. Her future life had nothing to do with him. Being able to speak to her face to face like this was the best possible outcome. Be safe, Ethan smiled. If you need anything, just give me a call. Juliet waved and left with Bella. Her long hair swayed gently at her waist, a gentle haven that Ethan would never be able to touch again in his lifetime. Goodbye, Ethan Blackwood.